Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this latest installment of I Love to Tell the Story. We're doing this from Our Savior's Lutheran Church in Faribault, a wonderful congregation filled with great people and with God's Spirit. And today there is our guest who needs probably no introduction to anybody from our church. It's your friend and mine, Georganne Danielson. So let's just pause and give a round of applause. Georganne,
Thanks, Jeff.
you know that I love you, and having you as a partner in this time together has been such a good thing. How are you doing these days? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing great. For those of you who don't know, I'm working remotely these days from Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah.
And the council and Jeff have agreed to let me do that for now. And we're still in the process of trying to hire my replacement. So I am postponing retirement until that happens. So I really appreciate being able to be down here where it's sunny and 73 today. So
you had us in the palm of your hand until you said sunny and 73. Georganne, you didn't really need to say that, did you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to rub it in, but it's beautiful here.
And I'm glad you can be with family, and I know you guys have looked forward to this for a long, long time. And Kurt now has moved into this next stage in his work, and you have too. And we want to do our best to honor that retirement. And we're hoping that by the time springtime comes and summer, we'll have a replacement. But I have to tell you, it's going to be hard for anybody to fill your shoes because, even though you're not a very big person, you got great big shoes.
Well, I'm hoping that the person feels like they don't have to do that. That there's more than one way to do a job, and that they don't have to be me, that they just have to be themselves, because I've always said that's the best person to be, because it's a lot easier than trying to be somebody else.
I should probably quote you on that. That's really pretty wise. So some of you have tuned into these conversations before, maybe others have not, but the idea is for people to do something that often Lutheran Christian types don't do. And that's tell their story and their relationship with God, with Jesus, and with the church. And my friend Georganne is pretty good at that. And I'm grateful. So I presume that most people know you, but can you tell us a little bit about your life up to this point? Maybe where you come from and your family and that kind of stuff. And honestly, the last question I would ask would be, what makes you tick? What really matters to you? So go ahead with your stuff.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised on a small family farm in Hector, Minnesota.
Yep.
We lived about 3 miles from town and grew up going to the same school for 13 years, kindergarten through 12th grade. So grew up and went to school with basically the same kids most of my elementary and high school years. We rode the kindergarten station wagon together to kindergarten. And so it was just an awesome way to grow up on a family farm back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s.
Yep.
So, I was the youngest of 5 children. There were 4 girls and 1 boy in the family, and my brother Richard would tell you that he got picked on a lot because he was right in the middle of the girls, 2 older, 2 younger, and just a great way to grow up. Lots of struggles. Being a farm family, there were always struggles, but I just considered myself fortunate to grow up in that environment and with the friends that I had in school.
Yeah, so. As a farm kid, you saw a lot of things and experienced a lot of things. What
Yeah.
what do you think was the biggest blessing about that? And then even to think about your connection with the church, because I know that for most farm families, or I should say many, that faith and life thing is so tightly connected.
Yeah. Um, we grew up going to church every Sunday. There wasn't a question about it.
Yep.
Started going to Sunday school, I think, when I was 3 or 4 years old. And two of my aunts also went to that church. So I think I had my aunts for Sunday school teachers probably throughout some of those earlier years. Um, my dad usually took us to church on Sundays because my mom worked at the county hospital and she worked overnights.
Oh,
And so she would get home from work on Sunday mornings about the time that we would be leaving for church. And so she would go to bed and sleep while we were at church. But both my parents grew up attending church. They were both raised in the church. And so that was very important to them. And I just remember sitting in church and being in awe of communion. I I remember my dad, when I was growing up, children were not allowed to go up with their parents when their parents went up for communion. I just remember when my dad came back from communion, it was the tradition in that church that the people would then kneel by their pew, and they would go in their pew and then kneel, and they would pray when they came back from communion. And so I just remember that being a very reverent time, and I was always intrigued by it.
yeah.
So, yeah.
So to dig kind of into your heart just a little bit, if I were to ask you a question about what it is that makes you tick, what is it that really matters the most to you? What would you say?
Well, for sure, my family. Kurt and I have 3 sons and 7 grandchildren,
Uh,
and beautiful daughter-in-laws and significant others for my sons. And my family is super important to me. During this pandemic, it's been very difficult for us to be apart and not to be able to be together and do the things that we as a family have come to love to do. Just not being able to hug them and give them the affection that we are used to doing has been difficult.
yeah.
Um, but knowing that the love is always there. And then just, I like people to be happy. And so, so I try my hardest to make sure that the people have what they need, both emotionally and physically. I kind of feel responsible. I like
Yeah.
to make sure that the people are happy and just enjoy life.
Georganne, there are some really wonderful goals that people have in life, but if one of yours is to bring joy into other people's lives, I would say that's not just a wonderful goal. I'd say that's a godly goal to bring joy into people's lives. So you've been at Our Saviors for a while. You want to talk a little bit about your evolution as a member, as a staff person, and what it means to be a part of this community called Our Saviors.
Okay. Yeah, Kurt and I and the boys, Ryan, Gary, and Scott, joined Our Saviors back in 1986. We were new to Faribault and knew absolutely no one in town.
Mm.
So the first weekend we were in town, we went and visited one of the other ELCA churches in town. And as we were driving back to our home after worship, we decided and agreed that that particular congregation was not where we wanted to be. It just didn't feel right for us.
Not a fit. Not a fit. Yep.
Not a fit. And so the next Sunday, we got in the car and we drove over to Our Saviors and thoroughly loved worship, felt very welcomed. And as we were driving home that Sunday, we agreed that we were going to go back the next Sunday because it just felt comfortable and like we had been there, before. And then the next day on Monday, we actually got a phone call from the pastor at that time, Mark Thompson, and welcomed us to church and was glad to see us the day before and was wondering if he could come and visit us that week. And so on Thursday, he came and visited us, and he pretty much got us involved right from the very get-go. He knew that we liked to sing. We had shared that with him, so he invited us to join the choir. I think the next year when there was election for church council, Kurt was elected to the church council in less than a year. Our kids got involved in Sunday school, in the music programs at Our Savior's. There were 3 children's choirs, sign choirs, handbell choirs. And then they grew up in all of the children and youth activities at Our Savior's. I volunteered for Sunday school. Kurt and I were confirmation guides. So we have lots of fond memories of the kids that were in our small groups for confirmation back in the early 90s. And I think all of our kids were confirmed by the year 2000. So
somewhere in there, you came on staff.
I did. I actually came on staff in 1997. So on June 1st, this will be my 24th year of being a staff member at Our Savior's. And I actually started out part-time as a support person to youth and children's ministry. And then shortly after that, our worship coordinator left. And so they asked me if I would be interested in becoming the worship coordinator as well. And so because I loved music, and Kurt and I and the boys were already involved in music we called it the confirmation band back then. So very similar to what Proclaim does on Wednesday nights during worship. We did that Wednesday nights just before confirmation. There was a worship aspect to confirmation back then as well. And so we've just always been involved. And then I don't remember, a couple of years after I started, then our church office manager left. And so then I was asked if I would like to step into that role. And then back in 2015, Pastor Sarah Neitz asked me if they restructured my position, and I became the director of operations at that point.
Which has been a blessing to our church and to me in ways that I could probably never express. So thank you. So listen, tell me a little bit about your sense of God's presence in your life. I mean, there are moments where a lot of people feel like God is close, and then there are moments where people feel like God might be far away. But let me ask you, when have you really sensed that God was at work in your life? That there's no question that God was there and prodding you or pushing you or pulling you, one of those things. You know what I'm asking? Hear what I'm saying?
Yeah. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, Kurt and I were in a band, a country band.
Yeah.
And I know you don't like country music.
Yeah. That's all right.
And we totally loved it. And every weekend we would go play at a dance, but then we would make sure that we got back home on Sundays because we didn't want our kids to miss church and Sunday school on Sunday. And one particular time, we had decided we were going to quit the band but I remember praying that God would help us to find a way to use our talents, our love of music, in a different way. And that's when things kind of opened up for contemporary worship at Our Savior's. And so Kurt and I took that over, coordinating that before I was even on staff as a staff member.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of saw that as Paul Gaucher had left as the associate pastor at Our Savior's, and he had kind of coordinated all of that contemporary worship up until then. So I saw that as a sign of God helping us to find a way to reshape our music, to use our talents in a different way. And then going back farther than that, I talked about growing up on the farm and growing up in the church. But the vision and the image of God that I had as a child is different than the image of God that I have now. And a lot of that is due to the fact, growing up, my mom grew up in a very strict German home. And she was taught that God was this being and that he was keeping track and writing down every time you did something wrong. And so as a child, I sort of feared God. My image of him was this big presence, this big man who was sitting behind this huge desk and checking off every time I maybe lied to my mom and dad. And so it was when I was going through confirmation, and then shortly after Kurt and I got married, that I really understood God's grace and his love. And that really changed my the way I felt about him, and my whole feeling about the fact that, we're all going to mess up. We're all going to make mistakes, but God's love is still going to be there, and he's going to hold us and surround us with his love. When Kurt and I were married, and 2 years later, we were expecting our first baby, and that pregnancy ended in a miscarriage. And I truly believe if I had not learned about God's grace and God's love, that whole experience of that loss would have been totally different for me, because I would have felt that I was being punished by God because of something that I might have done. So I'm thankful for the pastors that taught me about grace and love and God's care for all of us, and that he's a loving father. He's not a mean, vindictive father. And so I just really appreciate the fact that I learned that. Even though I had gone to Sunday school as a child, I didn't learn it until I was 20 years old. So
what a gift.
I'm thankful for that.
What a gift. What a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just been so many times through these last years, the birth of children. I mean, you can't possibly go through the gift of children and even grandchildren and not see the beauty and the love of God. And then the death of our parents. Sorry.
It's okay.
My dad died very unexpectedly, and I wasn't able to be there with him. And then Kurt and I experienced the death of both his mom and my dad his dad and my mom within 20 days of each other back in 2009. And just the outpouring of love that we received from members of Our Savior's during those difficult times, those are all signs of God's presence to me, that he's there amongst the people that he places before us each and every day.
Thank you for having the courage to share that witness, Georganne. It's not easy to talk about, but I'm grateful that you've shared it, because I'm expecting, I believe that what you just shared is a common experience for many, many people. So it's probably time to wrap this up, which is hard to do. I mean, you and I, we love to get together, we love to visit, we love to talk, and we can talk for a long, long time. But I just want to ask you, particularly now, as you have served our church so faithfully and so well, and you've been a part of so many of those important milestones, as you look forward, what is it that gives you a sense of hope? What is it that makes you say, you know what? We're going to be okay. God is taking care of us. How would you answer that?
Well, I think the year 2020 was a great example of how God is always taking care of us. It's hard to do church in new and exciting ways, but we were kind of forced into doing it this last year.
Yeah.
And I have just been so amazed and impressed and hopeful by the people of our Saviors. Financially, we are very, very strong, very sound. People have been supportive of us having to do church in a new and different way. And so that gives me a lot of hope. And, being members of our Saviors for 35 years now, the one thing that I've always known about our Saviors is that they are always very resilient. There's been things that have happened in the past that some congregations would not have survived.
Mm-hmm.
And the people of our Saviors just stay strong. They truly do have deep faith in God. And that gives me hope.
Well, and at the risk of making you cry one more time, I have no doubt, based on my experience for the last 3 years, that your presence in a position of leadership and support in our congregation has been a part of that. I do believe that God calls unique and gifted individuals to step up and answer the call. And Georganne, I'm grateful that so many years ago you said yes. And I'm grateful that you're able to move towards that time where that will come to a wonderful celebration. We got to have a party for you, my friend. We got to have a big, big, big party, and we will. But right now, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you as a relative newcomer. I don't know how many pastors have you had to put up with over the years, Georganne? Did you know?
Well, counting all the interim pastors and intern pastors, I think I counted 25.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord, have mercy. God
And
bless
then,
you.
and then when Kurt and I were first married, I also worked for a church, and I worked with 3 pastors then. So total of 28 pastors in my career.
My
So,
goodness.
but I have great memories of all of them.
Yeah.
Some better than others, but but I have great respect and admiration for all of them. So
I know we need to wrap this up, but I just don't want you to be able to backtrack and say, oh shucks. I just want to tell you that I believe that God's grace has been active in your life and active in our church for a long, long time. And you have been a gift to so many people and to me. And I'm grateful that you're willing to share your story, because I love to tell the story. And I believe you do too. And my hope and my prayer is that will continue to be the legacy of our church, is that we will tell the story of Jesus and his love. And Georganne, God bless you. Peace. Be well. And we will hopefully see you soon.
thanks so much, Jeff. Take care, everyone. Love
Okay.
you guys.
God bless you. Love you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.